first episode of Impact Unplugged, the podcast for fundraising operations professionals. Hosted by FundMiner co-founders Chelsea Lamego and Alejandro Stevenson Duran. In today's episode, we're exploring the art of building transformative relationships within organizations and beyond.
Welcome to the Impact Unplugged podcast. We're your hosts, Chelsea Lamego
and Alejandro Stevenson. Tune into the Impact Unplugged podcast, where we share advancement and nonprofit best practices and trends from industry experts. Today's episode will help you think about how to build relationships with your team, campus partners, and donors. We have a very special guest here with us who is going to share how he grew his team from 36 to 55 full-time employees. And he grew their fundraising operation from $14 million to $46 million. Here with us, we have Jake.
Hi there.
All right, so Jake Logan is the Vice President for Institutional Advancement at the University of Texas at El Paso. Jake and I previously worked together at UTEP, where I experienced his transformational leadership myself firsthand. Jake has an impressive advancement background with leadership experience at Ball State University, University of Missouri-Columbia, University of Oregon, University of Florida, and the American Heart Association. UTEP is sure lucky to have him. So Jake, when you first came on board at UTEP, I remember that we were going through a lot of transition. We had just gotten a new president after 31 years with our prior president. And of course, the average tenure of a university president is just over 5 years. So this was one person in charge for a really long time. And of course, a lot of things were going to change and get updated from there. And in addition to having a new president, there were several new deans that came on board, a new athletic director, several new provosts, and almost a full cabinet transition. And you were tasked by our new president, Dr. Wilson, to build it the right way. What did she mean by that? And where did you start and what did you tackle first?
Yeah, I mean, there was a ton of transition for sure. One thing you forgot to mention also that I started right when COVID started. My first day on campus was, my first day working from this room in my house, but officially being on the payroll at UTEP was May 4th, 2020. So just about a month and a half into the pandemic. But to answer your question, so truly, I mean, COVID was very, very challenging for all of the obvious reasons. But when you're a new vice president and you have a new president, what you typically will do is the president, vice president roadshow, right? You go out and you see all the donors and alums and, multi-city tour and that kind of thing. We weren't able to do that at all. We did try to do some donor meetings on Zoom, but those just don't work as well when you're trying to establish the relationship. So we didn't do as much of that either. But what it gave me was the opportunity to really get hands-on with the team and look closely into our structure. How are the processes and systems working? What were some of the opportunities for growth and where did we need to go? And so while I didn't get out there and meet the donors, it did give me the opportunity to be introspective about the team. And so one of the first things that we tackled was, first and foremost, we set a baseline. We took a look at who was where on the team. We were budgeted for 36, but I was employee number 32. So we had several open positions. We were dramatically overstaffed in one area and dramatically understaffed in another area, but we wanted to get some more information to help kind of build this case for the reorg that we knew needed to happen. And so we looked to CASE, and importantly, we looked to EAB, Educational Advisory Board, for industry-wide standards around how many FTEs should be in alumni engagement versus development, how many FTEs should be in management versus marketing and communications. And when we pulled that information, we were substantially out of whack. We had something like 13 people in alumni engagement, and I only had 2 full-time major gift fundraisers. So we needed to make some changes pretty quickly. So we went about kind of right-sizing the organization. I think one of the things I'm most proud of is we didn't have to let anybody go. We could repurpose positions. One example is on the alumni side, we had somebody doing office manager, administrative things, but we also needed that on the institutional advancement side. So we pulled that person over and had them work more broadly on institutional advancement.
And when you identified what you needed to do from an FTE perspective and how you were going to grow your team to align with the best practices when it comes to how the team is spread out across the different units,
Yeah.
how did you think about asking for more institutional support for additional FTEs?
Yeah, and so this was benchmarking to the industry, and a team of our size, UTEP has got 25,000 students. We're more than 100 years old. We've got almost 200,000 alums. An institution our size with our history, the average size is about 75 people in institutional advancement. And as I mentioned, we had 36. So we knew we would need to build. And obviously, as in any place that you work, and particularly with universities, there's always scarce resources. I couldn't control what the university was going to do, but I could sure make the case. And you and I worked on this closely. We looked at, again, this comes from EAB. And what they said is, if you're staffed in the right areas, no matter how many people you have, if you're staffed right in the different areas, that every new FTE that you add, fundraising or otherwise, would be an additional about $725,000 in fundraising revenue once that person gets hired and is up to speed. And so what we did, we pulled this information together and we said, we're not right sized yet, but we've got a multi-year plan to get there. In this first year, we're going to ask you for X number of positions, and that will help us get there more quickly. But if you don't give us anything, we're going to function better anyhow, just because we'll right size the organization. And we used those numbers and we said, and if we do it right, our aspirational base should be around 725 per FTE. And they trusted what we had to say. We backed it up by some of the information, best practices, and other data in our industry. And they took a chance on us, and they ended up giving us, I think, all but one of the positions that we asked for. And so from a budget standpoint, we added several positions. We also took some of the open positions in. I don't think they were structured right, and I don't think the salary bands were right. And so we refocused the positions that we already had. And so very, very quickly, we had a lot of extra FTEs to work with. But then we also, and this was the important piece, we were also staffed closer to what would be a reasonable number of FTEs in the different areas.
I want to make sure we talk about culture, because when you're growing an initial team by more than 50%, culture had to be top of mind for you, right? Walk us through your thought process there. How did you make sure that you were able to instill the work and team culture that you wanted right at the cusp of increasing your workforce by more than 50%?
Yeah, I mean, so when I came in and interviewed, what I told everybody, and I made sure that they understood about me, is that if you hire me, I'm going to be a culture first leader. That's the thing that I think is the difference maker. That's the thing that I value the most. And, a lot of people will say that during the interview process, but then you have to demonstrate that. And so, we had a lot of really wonderful people on the team, and they knew advancement wasn't really focused in the right direction, but they wanted to be, and they wanted to learn, and they definitely wanted to trust and believe that I really meant what I said about the positive organizational culture. And we really wove that into everything that we did from the beginning. I mean, we were as transparent as we possibly could be. We provided context around the reorg, why we were doing it, what we hope to achieve, how we think it would impact our success. I think it absolutely helped that there were some people who very quickly were promoted and their roles were expanded. I think it also helped that we didn't lay anybody off at the time. So you kind of walk in with some level of trust. And then I think everything that we put into place really kind of went back to, we're building a best practices organization. We're building, our aim, our aspiration is to be the best advancement operation in the nation to work for. And so people want to believe that, people want to trust that, but then when you actually demonstrate that's actually what you value and that's how you lead and manage, people responded really positively to that. I think as a result, I mean that's one piece of it. Two, another piece, and again, none of us would want to go back to COVID and what happened during COVID, but it did give us some really interesting things. I mean, all of us, all at once, did this really, really hard thing where we, at the drop of a hat, had to run home and work from home and figure out technology and figure out space. And, many people had kids next to them on their iPads trying to do their schoolwork. And we all did this really hard thing at a time where a lot of us were scared. And I think gone were the some of the normal kind of office nonsense things related to, Chelsea took the last bit of coffee out of the coffee pot and didn't make another one, and that kind of stuff just kind of went away. And importantly, I mean, you're looking
That
into
was
my home.
not a thing, by the way. I was not the coffee thief for
I
the
mean, I
record
wouldn't
here.
know if you were, but you're looking into my home. We were looking into each other's homes. We very often saw, dogs running around the background or heard them barking at the UPS guy, cats going across the keyboard, shirtless husband getting a beer out of the fridge behind you, that kind of thing. We all, it was funny, right? And we were all kind of doing this, hey, you're on mute, we are all in this thing together, and we started to really look at each other like humans rather than coworkers. And I think that was a really special thing. And so coming in at a time where we were all in this together, we already had this sense of team. And I think everything we did from that point on reinforced what we said we hoped for the team. And I mean, as a result, I'm really proud of the culture that we've built. And it's hard. It's hard, but it's worth it, and it's the right thing. In our team has demonstrated one successful year after the next. I think it's one thing if you say you've got the best organizational culture in the business, but if you're not having success, then that's really hard to continue to maintain that investment, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Jake, speaking of successes, talking results, what are some of the results that you're most proud of, especially in relation to this team and culture first approach that you implemented since day one?
Well, one of the things that we started doing, many of you are probably familiar with Gallup, the Gallup organization. They do strengths finders, but then they also do this Q12, which is this longitudinal survey they've done for decades, where they ask these 12 questions that get a measure of sort of a baseline of where you're at with an organization as an organization. We did that for the first time a year and a half ago, and there's a higher ed cohort. Our team was higher than the higher ed cohort. And then there's also an institutional advancement cohort. And we're right around the middle of the institutional advancement cohort. But then we took that information from the survey and we brought it back to the team and said, thank you. Thanks for responding and sharing this information with us. Over the next several weeks, we're going to do a series of different things intended to address some of the questions, some of the issues, some of the challenges that came up from this survey. And then we did, right? And I think, it's one thing to have a survey. I think you have to, if you're asking people to fill out a survey, that to me means you're making a promise to follow through and follow up on those results. And otherwise I mean, it's a waste of time. And so we did that. And then this last year we did the survey again, and the team has grown. Every year we've grown by quite a few people. So there were some new people in this, but we actually were the very top school in institutional advancement cohort. I was really, really proud that the people on the team feel engaged. They feel connected to this work. They feel valued, trusted, respected, listened to. And I think that really truly makes all the difference in the world, because we're able to have a different conversation if you have that trust.
I think that's something that's really been special about your story, sort of time and time again, and from all angles, is the notion of demonstrating results and following through on the things that you're promising to the different
Yeah.
constituents and groups of people that you're working with, including your team, your campus partners, your donors. And it seems like UTEP is just consistently outperforming the cohorts that they're in when it comes
Sure.
to team, as demonstrated by that survey you just mentioned, when it comes to the advancement ROI and the dollars that you all are
Yeah.
raising. And I love that earlier you brought up the EAB metric on each advancement FTE accounting for, on average, over $724,000 a year in additional fundraising revenue. And UTEP, since you've come on board, year after year has outperformed in that metric too.
Yeah, we have. And I guess that would be the second piece, right? Obviously, I care about the organizational culture. And I'll say my instruction from the president was to build it the right way for the long term. We know it'll take a while, but results will come. But actually, in my first full year, we set a fundraising record. So we averaged $14.2 million in the between 2010 and 2020. And this should not have been the case yet, because that metric, that 725,000 per FTE, it's after they're hired and get up to speed. But actually, we hit that metric. We were just over 800,000 per FTE my first full year. And I mean, I was as shocked as anybody because those results should not have come. And so, we said, look, this is a little bit of a fluke. Next year's going to be different. And it was, but not in the way that I thought. We ended up doing $39.8 million. And so we didn't hit that 725,000 per FTE. Actually, we were over $1 million. And it shouldn't have been like that because we weren't built. And so I was making sure to prepare cabinet and everybody else that the next year wasn't going to be the same. And then we turned around the next year and did $45.6 million. And so there will be a point at which it will be true that we will go backwards, but it hasn't been the last 3 years. And so last year, again, we were over that $1 million per FTE mark. This fiscal year, we're recording this at the end of April. We've got until the end of August for our fiscal year. And right now we're at $40 million, which is
Amazing.
about $800,000 per FTE. I think we may actually beat last year again, right? So this would be this. We've had 3 consecutive record-breaking fundraising years. This may well be a 4th,
Amazing.
but I swear we don't have it next year. So yeah, we've had some fundraising success, and saying this is what we expect and saying why we think we expect it is one thing, but actually delivering on that has made all the difference in the world for each following presentation that we have done to the budget committee.
Now, speaking of the budget committee, we just talked about how you were able to get everyone on your team focused on culture and moving in the right direction. Of course, as a higher education advancement professional, we are constantly working with all of our campus partners too. You just mentioned the budget committee. There are deans that you're constantly working with, department heads, there's cabinet, athletics, the scholarship office, etc. So how did you approach your campus partners and start to really build a culture of philanthropy and align everybody else that you were working with too?
So I'll say when I walked in, advancement didn't have a great reputation across campus. We weren't raising a lot of money and we were kind of an afterthought. It started to change actually before I got there. And Chelsea, this is where I'll embarrass you and sing your praises. One of the principal issues we had was related to spending endowment money and other gift money. We had several different places where money was kind of tucked in these different places. The right fund manager wasn't necessarily the one making the decisions on where the money went, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And Chelsea saw this issue and saying, oh, let's just fix this issue. Let's put in one place the gift language, the fund balance, the encumbrances, the regulations behind it, the projected income down the road, any of the gift agreement information, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that's what you created, the gift endowment management system, which is now FundMiner. But what was funny is I've been to these other big schools. Some of them were raising $500 million a year, and none of them had anything like this, right? So I walk in, and Chelsea had just found, I think, our dean of graduate students, something like $5 or $6 million that he could spend on graduate students because of this unification and this gift endowment management system. It was easy for people to understand what they had, how they needed to spend it, and to start spending it, right? And so advancement actually became a valuable partner, started to become a valuable partner before I got there, right? So So campus saw some good things from advancement, but when I came in, and this was a really important thing, I very, very authentically spent time with my cabinet colleagues, and I helped make sure everybody understood that we understood we're a service unit, right? We are there to make their goals possible, and just built authentic, trusting relationships with people on cabinet. They know I care about their goals. They know I care to be helpful. They know I care to structure the gift conversations we have in a way that's the highest and best use for the university. And it turns out not to be that hard when you authentically engage with these people, care about them as humans. But the bottom line was, we worked really hard to build trusting relationships and demonstrate that we knew our place in the university, and we wanted to deliver for them. And then of course it helped that we delivered. So our reputation went from not so great to actually, I think, we're pretty well respected on campus, and we try really hard to keep that up.
I love what you mentioned, Jake, about, quite honestly, being part of an organization and a division that suddenly finds millions of dollars in, funds that, other folks in that organization can suddenly spend to further their mission. I can understand how that can make you the popular person in the block. So, can you talk about, that importance? Did you double down on, fund utilization and ensuring everyone knew what funds they had? What role did that play in the large scheme of things when it came to your partnerships across campus?
Sure. I mean, when you stumble upon money that maybe you didn't know you had, then people tend to like you. That's a good thing, right? But I think, everybody else has a full-time job. If you're a professor of accounting, or if you're an AVP in student affairs or whatever, you've got a full-time job, and then some, and then some, and then some. And you have this additional responsibility slash opportunity sometimes to spend gift money to help advance what you're doing, if we've written the gifts the right way and the best way, and sometimes we haven't. What they don't need is for it to be really, really difficult for them to spend the money. For them, we wanted to make it as easy as possible for them to understand what they had, how they needed to spend it, and get it done. And that was absolutely transformational, because it's not great every place I've been, and I think it was particularly bad here, and it went from being a pronounced weakness to a pronounced strength. And so if we started to make it easy for them to spend the money and know what they had to spend it on, then they started actually spending the money, which it turns out made donors very happy, right? And then we could turn around in our impact report and share, frankly, a far better story than ever before of, we're spending more of your money. We're spending it more along the lines of what you intended. We're spending it more quickly, and here's the impact that it's making. And so while it had a tremendous a tremendous effect on our colleagues across campus, I would say it had an even more profound effect on our donor partners, right? I think that I don't think they understood how good it could be until we started sharing some of the impact reports with them, and they were pretty excited. And if donors are happy with how you've spent their gift, they're more likely to make another one. And we have seen that be the case.
Do you have a favorite story of impact that you can share with our listeners today from a gift you worked on?
Hard question, right? I mean, I've got 1,000 different stories. There are a couple of things that are super meaningful to me, like the food pantry is a really meaningful thing here, and we've gotten some good gifts for that. But actually, I mean, oftentimes people tell the story of that $25,000 gift that really made the difference. They never tell the story of the biggest gift, but actually, that's the story I'm going to tell. And it's not because it was the biggest gift. I think this was us, UTEP, coming full circle as the professionals I think we always aspired to be. There's a prominent family in town who's insanely generous. I mean, just incredibly generous to all sorts of organizations in town and out of town. And they have given generously to UTEP over the years, but probably not at the level. Not, I mean, there was never that big, huge gift that went to X or Y. And it wasn't their fault. From what I understand, there were no shortage of times where the university went to them with a $20 million idea, but I actually think that's the wrong way to do it. There are no shortage of $20 million ideas on campus. And so when we approached this family, and we've got a good relationship with them, and they started to see kind of this turnaround, not just in advancement, but university wide, we started the conversation of, we've got a lot of things we want to do. What do you want to do? What's that look like for you? What's your legacy here at UTEP? And it was just a fascinating conversation because actually pretty quickly we crystallized around one thing. And what they ended up doing was naming our College of Business. It was a $25 million gift. And it's one thing just to kind of put your name on the college, but that's not what this money is doing. Actually, what this money is doing is repositioning our College of Business to be the premier institution in the nation studying US Mexico trade and commerce. And that makes complete sense for our area. El Paso's got almost 1 million people, and the city literally across the street, Ciudad Juarez, has got about 2 million people. It's a huge hub of industry. A lot of the trade comes across the border here. This is a big city, and literally I can see this other city and this other nation from my office, right? And so what this does is allows us to build toward this notion of being the place in America to study U.S. Mexico trade, business, and those different kinds of things. It's going to have a tremendous impact, not just on this region, but also Mexico's our number one trading partner. It's past China, it's past Canada, and that relationship will continue to grow. It's going to have a tremendous effect on the rest of the country. So it's not just putting a name on something; it's actually something that's really going to do something meaningful. And working with the family, it was one of the easiest and most fun gift conversations I think I've ever had because we really did. We just put it on them. What do you want to do with your money that's meaningful? And they answered, and this is how they responded. And so, it's the largest gift that I've ever closed, and I think it's going to make a tremendous difference for generations here.
Congrats, Jake.
Amazing and true, and truly something that everyone in the El Paso Ciudad Juarez community can really benefit from, even crossing the UTEP organization, which is really amazing, Jake. Now, you've grown your fundraising operations by several orders of magnitude, right? By nearly every metric, whether it's team size or dollars raised. Um, of course, scaling has to be top of mind for you, and outside of human capital, of course, you folks need to leverage the latest and greatest, as they say, in terms of technology. What's your overall take and overall sentiment as far as the use of technology in this space? Do you see some rooms for improvement in some areas? This can be specific to UTIP or across the industry.
Boy, that's a big question. Um, as far as technology goes, there are a couple different things. I mean, truly, the gifted endowment management system, which is now FundMiner, it was such a huge step for us, and it made a big difference. I think the database system that advancement operations use, they've improved them a little bit over the years, but I really think they're antiquated. I don't think they do enough for the overall university. And some of the solutions I've seen make it too hard to make that reasonable. I think that's a problem that can be solved. I also think there's a tremendous opportunity with AI, and I don't know that I know just exactly what that is. But I do think that if we figure out how to harness the power of I don't think we'll have fewer people. I just think we'll hire differently. I'm not sure how much we'll need in the way of content creation, but we'll need a strategic mind to edit and guide and direct those kinds of things. And I think there are applications far beyond what I can understand. But I mean, there are no shortage of things that one could pay for, make your operation better. I think all of that relies on how good your operation already is. How good is the quality of the data? How easy is it for the different information systems to talk to one another? how much does campus value that collaboration? I think there's a tremendous opportunity. To some degree, don't I'm kind of out of my league in talking about that. I am kind of eager to see how things evolve.
Jake, one thing I want to go back to is we talked about ROI and the dollars returned back to the university for each FTE. And,
Yeah.
one thing that's special about leveraging technology to replace any manual repetitive processes where you can is it allows you to refocus some of your FTEs on frontline work and the human connection and strategy and innovation, which will really help boost that per FTE number, the bottom line as well.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think the more on top of your data and your systems you are, the more freedom it allows you to be creative and leverage that technology. It's only been a handful of years since we've been able to very quickly record a video thanking a donor and send it out to them right away. That's a commonplace thing now, but boy, that was a difference maker. But if you don't have the FTEs to coordinate and film, then you're not going to get those things out. And that's just one small example. But yeah, I agree with you, Chelsea.
An idea that quite resonated with me across the industry, and it's not even specific to this sector, but in the use of AI and other technologies, is that the idea that these technologies will replace human capital is a bit it's going in the wrong angle, in my opinion. I do think that what's much closer to the truth is that those organizations that are able to leverage technology and state-of-the-art AI will truly outperform those that are, working without it. But at the end of the day, everything should be centralized around the full-time employees, around the humans, because this, especially in this sector, this is a very human operation, and I see no other way of it flourishing and keeping it so.
Speaking of humans, Jake, thank you so much for your expert insight and sharing your story today. You are a human within the advancements space that is, very respected for the transformative work that you've been able to do in your career. We look forward to continuing to watch your journey and the great work that you're doing at UTEP and will continue to do. So thanks again for joining us today. And to our listeners, thank you all for tuning in. Be sure to stay updated and follow Impact Unplugged for more insights from industry experts like Jake. Thanks, Jake.
My pleasure.
If you enjoyed today's episode, subscribe to our channel on your favorite podcast platform. And remember, for more great content and insights, visit our website at www.fundminer.com and follow us on LinkedIn. Thanks again, Jake.
That's a wrap for today. Until next time, keep maximizing your impact.